Hi, class. In this assignment, I'm going to be going over our topic 5 assignment, which is our benchmark lesson plan. This is your time to shine and show what you've learned throughout the last 5 weeks of the course. And this is developing a lesson plan as our benchmark assignment. So for this, you're going to be writing a lesson plan that integrates both an ELA and math standard. And so this is your time to kind of show how you learned about identifying standards, writing those effective learning objectives, uh, adding in aligned instructional strategies, and how I can differentiate to meet the needs of all my learners. And so you'll find that we have our College of Education lesson plan template right here. It links you to it tells you to go to the Student Success Center. And so when you go to that Student Success Center, you'll want to pull our College of Education lesson plan template, and you'll find those lesson plan templates here. And there is the template that they want us to use. They do have additional templates, but they're asking you to use the traditional template. Most classes do ask for this traditional template to be used. So it downloads to your computer as a Word doc. Oh, I did not mean to close that. Let's try that again. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the components of this template. So when I look at this template, let me make it one page. All right. So you're going to just start by filling in your basic information with your name, your grade level that you are choosing to write the plan for. You're going to give a unit title or a subject to the plan. So if this is going to be a math plan, and you're going to add in some language arts standards, you can go ahead and write that it's a math plan. And if it's going to be a language arts plan and you're just going to add in some math, you can put language arts. Then you'll give it a title. You can get creative with your title if you'd like. And then you're going to move in to a lesson summary and focus. Now, before you do that, you might want to jump down to identify your standards first, because it's hard to give a title and a summary before I know which standards I'm going to use. So you are welcome to use the standards you've been planning with throughout this course. So you're welcome to choose some of the standards you've already been working with. But if you want, some students do like to choose a um, different standards just to get more practice. That is up to you. So once you identify those standards, it's important that you identify both one reading standard or language arts standard um, and one math standard, because the assignment directions do ask for you to use an integration of ELA and math standards. So when you think about integrating a ELA and math, writing is always one great way to integrate language arts into math so they can justify their work. So you could find an informational or a writing standard that goes really well with being able to justify your work. Or if you're thinking about language arts, you could incorporate math in some way. It could be the topic they're learning about, and they could use some math as they're learning about it. Sometimes I think it's easier to go from a math standard and incorporate ELA, but that might be just because I'm a math person. Okay. So when you use this lesson plan template, you're going to want to include a variety of strategies that are best suited for the lesson and the needs of your students. So once again, you're going to want to think about your students that you have in your class by looking at this class profile. So when you're thinking about supporting different groups of students, that class profile is going to be the class that you're referring to on this lesson plan. So you're going to use those instructional strategies that can be adapted to meet the adapted to meet the needs of the diverse learners of your students according to this class profile. That's your class. You'll want to think about some technology that can support your assessment. You want to include formative assessment. You want to have a differentiation activity for students identified below grade level, and you want to have differentiation activities that use critical thinking for those above grade level. And I really caution you to having them help the lower students, because often that is not what they want to do. They want to be challenged. They enjoy learning. So give them a little bit of a step up. All right, so let's go back to that lesson plan. So you're going to want to fill out this whole template. Let me zoom out just a little bit. That's way too much. There we go. Okay. So after you identify the standards, you're also going to give me the summary, like I had mentioned before, and then your classroom factors and grouping. Just say who's in your class. So we have, maybe 5 English language learners. I could say, 2 learning disabled. So list the students who are in your class. And then you want to just give a little bit of information on how that affects your planning or teaching of students. So if I think about my 5 ELLs, I want to make sure I'm including pictures, or, using clear language, or not using sarcasm or things like that. So you can just give a couple sentences on how that informs your teaching. Here, you want to provide your standards. I often recommend students do delete these sections before putting their information in, so you can read it to help you. But when you don't need that guidance, you can just delete that, and that'll keep your similarity score down when you submit your assignment. Then you'll go into writing your learning target or objectives. Make sure that you have an action verb, um, a verb that you can actually observe. For example, if I say the students will understand fractions, it's hard for me to observe or see the action of them understanding. But if I could say they'll solve problems involving fractions, I can observe them solving fraction problems. So you want to use a verb that can be measurable. And keep it concise. You don't need it to be a long paragraph. This example that shows exactly what it should be like. Given an unlabeled map outlining the 50 states, students will accurately label all state names. So one concise sentence tells you what students will be learning. Academic language, just give me some of that, the academic words they're going to need to know. If it was fractions, I would be saying numerators, denominators, and then in a few sentences, how will you teach those terms? So I will show them a pizza, and I will remove a slice, and I'll say that's a numerator, that's a denominator, or I'll show them pictures of pizza or something along those lines. Next section is just going to be the resources and materials you're using for this lesson. Then we get to the lesson, which is section 2. Here, you're going to start with your anticipatory set. Remember, the anticipatory set's just getting students' prior knowledge, activating their prior knowledge, or linking it to previous learning, and then just engaging them to get them interested in the lesson. You should not start teaching yet. So I often see people put long activities in here. In anticipatory sets, usually only 5 minutes. It could be a discussion. It could be filling out what do I know about the topic chart, like a KWL chart, but it's not supposed to be really long. Think about it as a trailer to a movie or something like that, where it gets you excited and motivated, but you haven't got to watch the whole movie yet. Then we get into the 3 sections called the multiple means sections. So these sections often get confused. The first section is the multiple means of representation. So this is how are you going to represent or how are you going to teach this for students to be able to learn it? So I like to think about the multiple means of representation section as our teacher actions. So what is the teacher doing to teach this lesson? I love to see you write step by step to paint a detailed picture in my head. It should be very specific to the standards that you chose. So it should not be general, like show a PowerPoint presentation, do some practice on whiteboards. That's very general, and I could use that for any lesson. So I want you to tell me exactly what you're going to do for this standard. So I'm going to get out pictures of pizza, and I'm going to slice them into 4 pieces with the whiteboard marker. And I'm going to say, this is how I partitioned it. How many pieces do you see in all? So those are the types of steps that I like to see on lesson plans. It's very specific to that objective and that standard that I'm teaching. So if the multiple means of representation section is those teacher actions, and you're showing them in several ways, you're showing them fractions and using visual models, using hands-on, this will help meet those various learners. So that's why there's multiple means here. So not just one representation, but how are you showing them in various ways to meet all of their needs? So maybe you create an anchor chart with fraction examples on it, or you use those hands-on manipulatives, or they're going on some sort of watching a video or some sort of adaptive technology. In each of these multiple means sections, you'll see there's an area for differentiation, and it includes all of these subgroups. It is important that you do keep these subgroups here. So I did say you can delete some of those guidance, but do keep these sections here. And so you want to explain for the English language learners, what could you do? And it might be some of the same stuff you're already doing up here, but you're just explicitly saying, okay, so I'm going to make sure I use those hands-on models, but I'm also going to do a word bank so they can learn the words. For my special education students, maybe I'm going to give them easier problems or less problems. The gifted students, I might give harder problems and so on. So those are important that you do complete those as well. The next multiple means section is of engagement. I like to think about this one as the student actions. So when we're thinking about the representation is how is the teacher representing it for students to be able to see the learning or see the concept, whereas the multiple means of engagement is what are the students doing to engage? So are they writing on their whiteboards and responding to you? Are they working in collaborative groups? Are they doing a worksheet? Are they playing a game? So there's a lot of ways to engage students. We tend to just go to worksheets automatically because that's just the easiest way to go. But there's so many things that you can do besides worksheets, like computer games or games with dice and or games with cards that you can use to engage students. Whiteboard practice, or sometimes I've even in kindergarten I see like practices with shaving cream and things like that. So get creative. They give you some ideas, hands-on activities, structured discussions, experiments, doing problem solving. So this is the time where you can really get creative with your lesson plan on what the students can do to have fun, like a matching card activity, matching fraction models to the fraction symbols. In this section, you'll also need to explain how you'll differentiate, because now we're thinking about how am I going to support the learners here. So if they're working in cooperative groups, the language learners might have somebody to help them, or you'd be able to use their word bank or sentence frames when they're talking to their peers. Or the students with special needs will have, maybe a multiplication chart if they were needing that or something along those lines. The last multiple means section is the multiple means of expression, and this is our assessment. So how are you going to know that students met that objective? Remember, your objective is written at a level that is for a lesson, one lesson. So, what are they going to learn by the end of this lesson? And so, if your objective is too big and too much to teach in one lesson, you should go back and pare it down. What can I accomplish in one lesson, not the whole standard? Because then you want your assessment to check if they learned what you thought they were going to learn by the end of this lesson. So maybe my objective is students can identify and name fractions. And so can they look at the fraction and say, that's 2/3 and give me the name? That's just a little part of the standard. So it's very focused. Now my assessment is going to be aligned to that. Can they identify and can they name fractions? And so here you're going to give a formative assessment. And how are you going to check by the end of the lesson that they learned it? And then you also want to share a summative assessment. So if after this whole unit on fractions or after teaching the whole standard, how will you assess them? Again, it does ask for how you'll differentiate for each of those subgroups. So be thinking about on this assessment, what type of differentiation may they have? It could be they can use pictures or manipulatives, or it could be that they, get a harder problem for our gifted students, whatever it may be. Finally, extension activity or homework. Don't put NA or no homework. It is important that you do put something in this box. So just how could they go home and practice? Maybe they have to go home and find fractions in their house and be ready to share a fraction they found in their house. Or maybe they're going to go home and practice fractions in some way. Maybe they have some flashcards or Sabachi cards or a worksheet on fractions. So that's the template. You're going to be filling in that. And then after, you're going to make sure that, do include that summative assessment. It says part 2, summative assessment. So you'll want to make sure that you do include that. And it says that you should create the summative assessment and attach it to this benchmark. So with this, you're going to give the summative assessment will be aligned to your standard and your objective. You're going to give directions for students, and you're going to have 3 short answer response items. So just questions where they would write, and then 10 multiple choice. And then 1 restricted response essay question that clearly identifies the task to be performed. So when it says restricted response essay question, it's just they need to write a paragraph or an essay of some sort based on a topic that you asked. So can you explain how you can identify fractions, or where can you find fractions in the real world? So that will be an essay for them. And then on there, you'll also need to tell how you'll differentiate to meet the needs of your diverse learners. For example, if students are having to write an essay and they're not English speakers, they might need a word bank or sentence frames or something to help them. All right, finally, part 3 is the rationale. And you're going to just write a rationale that it talks about the instructional strategies you chose to use in your lesson plan, your assessment practices, and how your chosen assessments can contribute to the development of your students. So how is that going to assess exactly what you were teaching, and how does that contribute to their development? Support those findings with 3 scholarly sources. And if you need a little extra time on this assignment, I know that writing the lesson plan for a first time can take a long time, and then developing your own assessment and writing a rationale. This is one meaty assignment worth 300 points. So don't hesitate to let me know, hey, I'm going to take an extra day. I really want to do this well. I do not mind if you take a couple extra days to get this done. I'd rather see a quality work from you than you rush to turn it in. All right, if you have any questions as you're working on this assignment, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I will also post an exemplar lesson plan. It may not have the integration of math and ELA in it, but what an exemplar plan looks like alongside our announcement this week. Have a great day.